The NBA trade deadline right around the corner on February 10th. So on today's show, we're breaking down some Boston Celtics trade candidates. But first, subscribe for the latest Celtics news and rumors all year long. We're less than 100 people away from 8,000. So hit that red subscribe button down below and join the movement right now. You're watching Boston Celtics Today by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Senior. Coming your way on today's show, some really intriguing names who the Boston Celtics could elect to target heading into that aforementioned February 10th NBA trade deadline. And a guy who has been in the NBA rumors buzzmill is Jerami Grant of the Detroit Pistons. Now, this is a classic story of a wonderful player development path. Jerami Grant is a guy who came into the NBA out of Syracuse, was really looked at as such a raw player, and he was for a couple of years, but the last couple of years, he's really been on an upward trajectory and has become a very well-rounded player in the NBA on both the offensive end of the floor as well as the defensive end of the floor. And he could be made available heading into that NBA trade deadline. According to Mark Stein, there is, quote, a rising belief that Grant could be traded over the next couple of weeks. And for Boston, he could really be a nice piece for the struggling Celtics because of his upside defensively and offensively. Now, when he came out of Syracuse, he was looked at as some type of uber athlete who couldn't really shoot the rock. He was really just a high flyer, but nowadays, he's really worked on his offensive arsenal to become a well-rounded player. 1 year, almost $21 million left on his deal, currently out with a thumb injury. He's going to be back soon, so I don't think that injury is going to impact his status as a trade candidate. Grant is a guy who can really do it all. When I break down the tape and when I break him down, with the Denver Nuggets, he really started to gather some momentum as a guy who gave the Nuggets a lot defensively, but then started to expand his game out to the three-point arc, and that is translated to his time with the Detroit Pistons as well. Now, this year, he's been out for a couple of weeks because of that injury, but 20 points per game, 2.5 dimes. He's shooting around 41% from the hardwood, 33% from distance, and with the Celtics, they need to be better defensively. They need some versatility offensively, which is why I wouldn't hate the idea of trading for Jerami Grant going into February 10th. Now, the big thing to monitor, he's going to want a long-term contract. So if the Celtics think, hey, we can compete this year, Jerami Grant would really move the needle for us, that would then kind of sway them to maybe make a trade like this. Something we'll continue to monitor going into February 10th. So as we continue to break down these Boston Celtics trade targets, name a player you think the Celtics should trade for. Should it be a big man? Should it be Jerami Grant? Another player? Drop me some names in the comment section right now. Next up, a guy who we've talked about a lot here on Boston Celtics Today because of his best friendship with Jayson Tatum. It's Bradley Beal of the Washington Wizards. Now, to start the year, the Wizards were one of the surprise teams in the NBA. They got off to a hot start. They've really cooled off over the last several weeks. And rumors around Beal being on the trade block have kind of varied from being out there to him not really asking for a trade, but a couple of weeks ago, he did say, look, I am not going to sign a long-term deal with the Washington Wizards. They have to prove to me that we are going to be long-term players in terms of being in the win-loss column. And we know Bradley Beal, John Wall, they had some playoff success, but really outside of 1 year, they have not made a deep playoff run. And as a basketball fan, I just want to see really elite players like Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard go to a place in a big market where I think it's just going to add to the conversation of them being great. When they're hidden in a place like the Pacific Northwest in Portland or in the nation's capital in D.C., you don't fully realize their greatness. But if Bradley Beal were to team up with his childhood friend in Jayson Tatum, I think a lot of people would realize, man, this guy is one of the best bucket getters in the NBA. Now, this year, his numbers are certainly down from last year when he finished second in the NBA scoring title behind Steph Curry. Still solid numbers, but really needs to become a better three-point shooter, but still 24 points per game. He's shooting around 45% from the floor, which really isn't bad, but 30% from distance. That number certainly down from last year, but it is starting to climb a little bit as he goes on this hot streak. For me, Reunite the homies. Bradley Beal, Jayson Tatum both went to Chaminade Academy. They grew up in St. Louis together. They used to ride to school together growing up, and they have talked about them being best friends, and I think that could translate to them being a solid 1-2 punch. The question I do have is if you reunite three wings, or if you reunite Bradley Beal and Jayson Tatum and you have three wings on the floor with Jaylen Brown, if you don't elect to trade him away, could that be a clunky fit? What do you think, though? Should the Celtics trade for Bradley Beal? A very fascinating question for this fan base, because if you do, you might have to trade away a player the likes of Jaylen Brown. Type Y for yes, type N for no. Chime in, sound off in the comment section down below. Now, we do have a deal we want to tell you about. Thanks to our friends at Fanatics, today's presenting sponsor, this Boston Celtics hoodie. It's winter. It's cold in the Northeast. You can get this hoodie 25% off by going to that link down below, chatsports.com/Celtics hoodie. The logo, dope, for one of the most iconic franchises in NBA history. The material is very fresh as well, and it keeps you warm during the winter, the fall, and the spring months. I'm from the Northeast, and April, I hate it because you never know what the weather's going to be. It could be 70 degrees one day, 40 degrees the next day. That's why these hoodies come into play. I'll put that link down below in the comment section as well as the description of this video. A point guard trade target now. How about DeAaron Fox? Sacramento Kings, the rumors there starting to really grow some buzz as the Kings did not have DeAaron Fox available, and now they might have DeAaron Fox available to be had in a trade. Sacramento right now is a dumpster fire, and they've been for really the last 20 years. And they've started to open up these trade talks revolving around DeAaron Fox, as I talked about. And DeAaron Fox at one point wasn't made available, maybe a franchise pillar for the Sacramento Kings. But now, if you're Sacramento, you fired your coach, you've been in basketball purgatory for a really long time, why not just hit that reset button and decide to rebuild? And if you can get a really quality player back for DeAaron Fox, why not make him available if you think it helps your basketball team in the long run? For DeAaron Fox, he's an exciting player for a couple of reasons. Very good athlete, quick twitch, very fast, and when he's in the open floor, he really is exciting, and he can really push the tempo as a point guard who can play a little bit off ball as well. Now, with Sacramento, you have DeAaron Fox, you have Davion Mitchell, you have Tyrese Halliburton, so all of those guys have kind of gone in and out of playing that point guard spot, so that positional versatility in nowadays NBA, where a lot of players are positionless, I kind of like those qualities. And for Fox, he's a very good scorer. He's not going to give you a ton defensively, but he can really do a bunch of things offensively with creating for himself, creating for his teammates. His three-point numbers this year are atrocious at 25%, but maybe he'd be rejuvenated. Maybe he'd be excited by a change of scenery going to a big market in Boston. And we've seen so many times when some of these guys get traded, they really just have a renewed sense of life, and their numbers increase because of it. But 21 points per game for Boston, that'd be a nice addition for the Celtics. How about Domantas Sabonis? Indiana Pacers in a similar situation as Sacramento. They're not nearly the dumpster fire that the Kings are, and they've had a lot more success over the last several years as compared to the Kings. But the Pacers are in a position right now where they might decide to just go full sell. And if they go full sell, maybe they trade away Domantas Sabonis, who the last 2 years has made it to back-to-back All-Star games. Now, according to this report that just came out on Wednesday, the Celtics are looking for an All-Star player back for Domantas Sabonis. Easy to see why, considering his value, his age, him being somewhat affordable for the value that he gives you, and the fact that, as I talked about, he's a back-to-back All-Star. He can play the 4, he can play the 5, he can shoot from the outside, he can mix it up down low on the low block, the elbow, the baseline. He's got that jumper versatility to his game as well, where he can really kind of break it down and shake it down off the dribble depending on the matchup or mismatch. And also, he's big enough and has the size down low to create for himself on the low block. Let's get to another Indiana Pacer. That is Myles Turner. Now, he is down right now with an injury, but that's not really expected to impact his trade value going into the NBA trade deadline. Now, Turner has voiced his displeasure with his role in Indiana. He's led the NBA in blocks the last 2 years, so he really does have a lot of defensive ability. His knack for just making plays happen defensively around the rim really is fabulous, and his growth offensively down low and expanding that game out to the three-point perimeter has been very, very impressive. Now, talking about that injury, he has a stress reaction in his foot. He's expected to come back sometime around that February 10th NBA trade deadline. I like Myles Turner and the fit on Boston for a couple of reasons. He's not that old school big who can really only mix it up down low. He's worked so hard and diligently on expanding his offensive arsenal out to the three-point arc. He can chuck it from deep, he can shoot the three, but also if he needs to go up against a big man like Joel Embiid, who the Celtics, I don't know, might have to face in an NBA playoff series or during the stretch run going into the NBA playoffs, Myles Turner can kind of go up against a big man like Joel Embiid and clog the paint, but also he has that athletic ability to get out to the three-point arc as well. Trade candidates for Boston. Hey, that's just what we do. We're churning out content here on Boston Celtics Today. Producer Jack Lauderay, a Celtics fan, SFAing things the real ones know. Before we get out of here, name a player the Celtics should trade for. It could either be any of the players that we broke down or another player. Interested to see who you name in the comment section.